Unit 5 of the ICS 300 course is an in-depth look at the planning process. ICS emphasizes orderly and systematic planning. The incident planning process allows the organization to divide incident objectives into tactical assignments for specific operational periods. The incident action plan is the central tool for planning during a response. This unit will cover the planning process and the incident action plan. The planning process is an integral part of ICS. It provides a formalized mechanism for maintaining a big picture approach to incident management and supports incident safety, effective resource management, and the achievement of manageable objectives. It is a collaborative process that includes all members of the command and general staffs to ensure all key issues are addressed. Many students assume ICS is form driven. Instead, it is objective driven. The purpose of the ICS forms is to provide a template for command and general staff members as they develop the plan in a high-stress environment so they do not leave anything important out. The forms serve to guide the development of the incident action plan by providing a mechanism where the responsible staff member completes the portion of the plan that they have responsibility for. The objectives for Unit 5 include: identify the importance of planning for incidents and events, explain the differences between planning for incidents and events, discuss major planning steps including logistical concerns, cost-benefit analysis, understanding the situation, developing and implementing the plan, and evaluating the plan, explain the criteria for determining when the incident action plan should be prepared in writing. Describe the role and use of ICS forms and supporting materials included in an IAP for effective incident or event management. Describe the strategy meeting, tactics meeting, planning meeting, operational period briefing, and team meeting. Given a scenario, describe appropriate strategies and tactics to meet incident objectives. And conduct a tactics meeting and complete an ICS 215 operational planning worksheet and ICS 215A Incident Action Plan Safety Analysis using the strategies and tactics from the scenario. Describe how ICS 215A Incident Action Plan Safety Analysis is used with ICS 215 to mitigate hazards in tactical operations. Recognize agency-specific aviation policies and procedures as they relate to safety. Participate in a planning meeting using the planning process and develop a written IAP for an incident or event using the appropriate ICS forms and supporting materials. Using the IAP, conduct an operational period briefing. Yes, there's a lot of material to cover in Unit 5. However, between the online lectures, the online assignments and discussion boards, and the in-person class, we'll get through all of it. For the purposes of the online lecture, we've broken this into 2 sections so that it's a little bit easier to digest. Before we get too deep into the lecture, take a moment and ponder this question. What are the benefits of the incident planning process? Hit pause on the recording and make some notes to bring with you to the in-person class. Sound, timely planning provides the foundation for effective incident management and is applicable to both events and incidents. The NIMS ICS planning process represents a template for strategic, operational, and tactical planning that includes all steps that an incident commander and other members of the command and general staffs should take to develop and disseminate an incident action plan. The planning process may begin with the scheduling of a planned event, the identification of a credible threat, or the initial response to an actual or impending event. The process continues with the implementation of the formalized steps and the staffing required to develop a written incident action plan. The planning process should provide the following: current information that accurately describes the incident, situation, and resource status, predictions of the probable course of events, alternative strategies to attain critical incident objectives, and an accurate, realistic incident action plan for the next operational period. During the initial stages of incident management, planners should develop a simple plan that can be communicated through concise oral briefings. Frequently, this plan must be developed very quickly and with incomplete situation information. As the incident management effort evolves over time, additional lead time, staff, information systems, and technologies enable more detailed planning and cataloging of events and lessons learned. The five primary phases of the planning process are: understand the situation, establish incident objectives and strategies, develop the plan, prepare and disseminate the plan, and execute, evaluate, and revise the plan. Understanding the situation includes gathering, recording, analyzing, and displaying situation, resource, and incident potential information in a manner that will facilitate increased situational awareness of the magnitude, complexity, and potential impact of the incident, and the ability to determine the resources required to develop and implement an effective incident action plan. The second phase is the establishment of incident objectives and strategies, which includes formulating and prioritizing measurable incident objectives and identifying an appropriate strategy. The incident objectives and strategy must conform to the legal obligations and management objectives of all affected agencies. These may also need to include specific issues relevant to critical infrastructure. Reasonable alternative strategies that will accomplish overall incident objectives are identified, analyzed, and evaluated to determine the most appropriate strategy for the situation at hand. Evaluation criteria include public health and safety factors, estimated cost, and various environmental, legal, and political considerations. Developing the plan is the third phase and involves determining the tactical direction and the specific resource, reserves, and support requirements for implementing the selected strategies and tactics for the operational period. Before the formal planning meetings, each member of the command and general staffs is responsible for gathering certain information to support the proposed plan. The fourth phase, preparing and disseminating the plan, involves preparing the plan in a format that is appropriate for the level of complexity of the incident. For the initial response, the format is a well-prepared outline for an oral briefing. For most incidents that will span multiple operational periods, the plan will be developed in writing according to ICS procedures. Finally, we must execute, evaluate, and revise the plan. The planning process includes the requirement to execute and evaluate planned activities and check the accuracy of information to be used in planning for subsequent operational period. The general staff should regularly compare planned progress with actual progress. When deviations occur and when new information emerges, that information should be included in the first step of the process used for modifying the current plan or developing the plan for subsequent operational periods. What are the situations when you would consider developing a written incident action plan? Pause the lecture and make your notes for the in-person class so that we can have a lively discussion around this topic. For simple incidents of short duration, the incident action plan most likely will be developed by the incident commander and communicated to subordinates in a verbal briefing. The planning associated with this level of complexity does not warrant a formal planning meeting process. However, certain conditions may warrant a more formal process. A written incident action plan should be considered whenever two or more jurisdictions are involved in the response. The incident continues into the next operational period. A number of ICS organizational elements are activated. It is required by agency policy, or a hazmat incident is involved. It should be noted that a written IAP provides a clear statement of objectives and actions, a basis for measuring work effectiveness and cost effectiveness, a basis for measuring work progress and providing accountability, and documentation for post-incident fiscal and legal activities. An important concept to be discussed with regard to the planning process is the operational period concept. All ICS planning is designed around identifying accomplishments expected over a set period of time called the operational period. The specific length of time of the operational period varies based on a list of factors, which include safety conditions. Safety of responders, victims, and others is always the first priority of any response. Condition of resources. Planning must be done far enough in advance to ensure that additional resource needs for the next operational period are available. The length of time necessary or available to achieve tactical assignments. The availability of fresh resources. Future involvement of additional jurisdictions or agencies. Environmental conditions. These factors, such as the amount of daylight remaining and weather and wind conditions, can affect decisions about the length of the operational period. The incident commander will determine the length of the operational period with input from staff. In some cases, the operational period length may change from day to day based on the operational and incident needs. The length of an operational period depends on the nature and complexity of the incident. Common lengths of operational periods are 4, 8, 12, or 24 hours depending on the nature and complexity of the incident and the working conditions such as weather, safety, and anticipated fatigue. However, in the case of a hazardous materials incident, 2 to 4 hours is the typical maximum length for an operational period. For relatively stable situations or recovery actions such as debris removal, a single operational period can last for multiple days. Often, during the initial strategy meeting, the start times and end times for the operational period are established. As an example, for 12-hour periods, it may be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. For some incidents, the starting time and duration for the operational period may have to be established at the planning meeting. There may be a need to fully interrogate the results of the previous operational period before the next planning cycle can be established. This delay in establishing the operational period might be seen during the initial stages of an incident involving a hazardous materials release, where the results of the first entry might alter the approaches or need for subsequent entries. All command and general staff members have responsibilities for planning, and it is important to understand who does what. The incident commander provides overall incident objectives and strategies, establishes procedures for incident resource ordering, establishes procedures for resource activation, mobilization, and employment, and approves completed incident action plans with a signature. The incident commander also works with the safety officer to review hazards associated with the incident and propose tactical assignments. Assistance is also provided with developing safe tactics and developing a safety message. The operations section chief assists in identifying strategies, determines tactics to achieve incident objectives, determines work assignments and resource requirements. The operations section chief also works with the safety officer to review hazards associated with the incident and proposed tactical assignments, and assist in the development of safe tactics. The planning section chief conducts the planning meeting and coordinates the preparation and documentation of the incident action plan. The logistics section chief ensures that resource ordering procedures are communicated to appropriate agency ordering points, develops a transportation system to support operational needs, ensures that the logistics section can support the incident action plan, completes assigned portions of the written incident action plan, and places orders for resources. The finance and admin section chief provides cost implications of incident objectives as required, ensures that the incident action plan is written within the financial limits established by the incident commander, and evaluates facilities, transportation assets, and other contracted services to determine if any special contract arrangements are needed. The previous unit presented the initial response process, or the leg of the planning P. This unit focuses on the planning cycle process that covers each operational period. This starts with the Incident Command or Unified Command Objectives meeting. The Incident Command or Unified Command establishes incident objectives that cover the entire course of the incident. For complex incidents, it may take more than one operational period to accomplish the incident objectives. The cyclical planning process is designed to take the overall incident objectives and break them down into tactical assignments for each operational period. It is important that this initial overall approach to establishing incident objectives establish the course of the incident rather than having incident objectives only address a single operational period. During the Command and General Staff meeting, the Incident Command or Unified Command may meet with the Command and General Staffs to gather input or to provide immediate direction that cannot wait until the planning process is complete. This meeting occurs as needed and should be as brief as possible. This represents the beginning of the first operational period. This begins a circular sequence that continues with a period of time used to plan for the tactics meeting, holding the tactics meeting, a time to prepare for the planning meeting, holding the planning meeting, and then time to prepare and approve the incident action plan. This is followed by an operations briefing that is attended by both the offgoing and oncoming shifts. At this point, a new operational period begins. The next step is to execute the plan and assess progress. Before each operational period begins, the incident objectives must be assessed and updated as needed. Here are some of the things that should be considered. Is the incident stable, or is it increasing in size and complexity? What are the current incident objectives, strategies, and tactics? Are there any safety issues? Are the objectives effective? Is a change of course needed? How long will it be until the objectives are completed? Finally, what is the current status of resources? Are resources in good condition? Are there sufficient resources? If you had to assess objectives during an incident, what other questions would you ask? The purpose of the tactics meeting is to review the strategy and tactics developed by the operations section chief. This includes determining how the selected strategy or strategies will be accomplished in order to achieve the incident objectives, assigning resources to implement the tactics, and identifying methods for monitoring tactics and resources to determine if adjustments are required. The Operations Section Chief, Safety Officer, Planning Section Chief, Logistics Section Chief, and Resource Unit Leader attend the tactics meeting. Prior to this meeting, the General Staff take all needed steps to prepare by assessing current tactics and resources. The Operations Section Chief leads the tactics meeting. The ICS Form 215, or Operational Planning Worksheet, and the ICS Form 215A, Incident Action Plan Safety Analysis, are used to document the tactics meeting. However, it should be noted that for less complex incidents, the tactics meeting may be an informal gathering of just the key players. As we go through the rest of the lesson, make sure that the takeaway is not on the structure of the meetings, but on the process used to develop the plan. In Unit 4, we looked at the differences between incident objectives, strategies, and tactics. Let's take a quick moment to review. Incident objectives state what is to be accomplished in the operational period. Strategies establish the general plan or direction for accomplishing the incident objectives. Tactics specify how the strategies will be executed. The Incident Commander or Unified Command establishes the incident objectives and overall strategies. The Operations Section Chief translates the objectives and strategies into tactics. Now, let's talk about a couple ways to develop appropriate strategies. First, the Operations Section Chief generates alternative strategies to meet the objectives. Next, the Operations Section Chief selects a strategy or strategies that is within acceptable safety norms, makes good sense because it is feasible, practical, and suitable, is cost effective, is consistent with sound environmental practices, and meets political considerations. Tactical direction describes what must be accomplished within the selected strategy or strategies in order to achieve the incident objectives. Tactical direction is the responsibility of the incident commander or the operations section chief, if that position has been assigned. The incident commander or the operations section chief gathers input from the branch directors and division and/or group supervisors on alternative tactics. Gathering input is particularly important when the incident involves personnel from multiple disciplines. Jointly developed tactics can ensure understanding and enhance commitment. Tactical direction consists of the following steps. First, establish the tactics. Determine the tactics needed to implement the selected strategy. Typically, tactics are to be accomplished within an operational period. During more complex incidents, tactical direction should be stated in terms of accomplishment that can be realistically achieved within the timeframe currently being planned. Next, assign resources. Determine and assign the kind and type of resources appropriate for the selected tactics. Resource assignments will consist of the kind, type, and number of resources available and needed to achieve the tactical operations desired for the operational period. Finally, monitor performance. Performance monitoring will determine if the tactics and resources selected for the various strategies are both valid and adequate. Let's take a moment and look at an example of how a strategy and a tactic were chosen. The objective is reduce reservoir level to 35 feet by 0800 on February 10th. Three possible strategies are identified. The first one was reduce or divert inflow. The second one was release water from the spillway. The third strategy, and the one that was selected, was to pump water from the reservoir. Once the strategy was selected, two tactics were developed for how to get the work done. First, use truck-mounted pumps working from the road into the spillway. Second, portable pumps on the east side discharging into Murky Creek. Once the tactics have been selected, the next logical step is to determine what and how many resources will be needed to accomplish the tactics. Now, consider this question, pause the lecture and make some notes, and be prepared to discuss this in the discussion board. Why must personnel and logistical support factors be considered in determining tactical operations? The cost unit within the Finance Admin section provides all cost analysis, including cost-benefit analysis, for the organization. For example, the use of National Guard resources for transportation may be more expensive than contracting locally for the same resource. So consider this question. What are some factors that you would consider when assessing the costs and benefit of proposed tactical assignments? Make your notes and be prepared to discuss these at a later time. The Operational Planning Worksheet is designed to document the results of the tactics meeting. You can find a copy of the ICS 215 in the Reading, or you can also find it for download on the FEMA website listed in Assignment 5. The ICS Form 215 Operational Planning Worksheet is a planning tool used to assist in establishing resource needs for an operational period. It communicates the decisions made during the tactics meeting concerning resource assignments to the resource unit. The resources unit uses the worksheet to complete assignment lists, or ICS 204s, and the logistics section chief uses the worksheet for ordering resources for the incident. The form is initiated prior to the planning meeting by the incident commander or the operations section chief, who uses the worksheet to plan resource requirements for the next operational period. The form reflects resources available for assignment during the next operational period, which is information provided by the resource unit in the planning section. It also is used as a display during the planning meeting, where it is finalized based on contributions from the command and general staffs. The form also provides information on work assignments, kind of resources needed, any specialized equipment, or supplies that may be needed, reporting location, requested arrival time for additional resources, and the total number of resources that need to be ordered for the next operational period. By using the worksheet, planners can determine total resources required, subtract the number on hand, and determine additional resources needed. For example, if the assignment calls for 25 personnel and you have 12 on hand, then 13 more people need to be requested. The ICS Form 215 can show graphically that span of control is within guidelines or has been exceeded, as well as quickly help to identify surplus resources that may be released. Some agencies that regularly use the planning worksheet have prepared it in a larger format on various sizes of whiteboard. This makes the worksheet visible to a larger audience at planning meetings. On larger incidents, the ICS Form 215 should always be used to determine what tactical resources are needed. The worksheet provides an area to indicate the following: operational period being planned, incident name, and the name and position of the person preparing the form, kind of resources, reporting location for resources, required arrival time. Remember, resource typing is the description and categorization by capacity and/or capability of resources that are commonly exchanged in disasters via mutual aid. The next step in the process is to prepare for the planning meeting. The planning section coordinates preparations for the planning meeting following the tactics meeting. These preparations include the following activities: analyze the ICS 215 developed in the tactics meeting, finalize an ICS 215A Incident Action Plan safety analysis, which is typically prepared by the safety officer based on information from the ICS 215. Assess current operations effectiveness and resource efficiency, and gather information to support incident management decisions. The next page in the reading provides a summary of responsibilities for preparing for the planning meeting. It is the job of all incident managers to ensure the safety of the following: the responders to the incident, persons injured or threatened by the incident, volunteers assisting at the incident, and news media and the general public who are on scene. Before the planning meeting, either the safety officer or incident commander must complete an analysis of the safety concerns related to the tactics and resources being deployed. We will discuss this slide in class because it is dependent on the makeup of the class. But go ahead and be considering: does your agency have aviation safety policies and procedures? What steps would you use to identify potential incident safety concerns? Some best practices to answer this question include: use a safety checklist or another job aid. Communicate with your incident personnel about their safety concerns. Be aware of trends in the incident that may lead to hazards or safety concerns. And consult with personnel who may be familiar with local hazards and safety issues. The incident safety analysis can also be used to identify, prioritize, and mitigate the hazards and risks of each incident work location by operational period. It can identify hazardous tactics so that alternatives may be considered, and it can be used to determine safety implications for the types of resources required. The purpose of the Incident Action Plan safety analysis is to aid the safety officer in completing an operational risk assessment to prioritize hazards, safety, and health issues, and to develop appropriate controls. This worksheet addresses communication challenges between the planning and operations, and is best utilized in the planning phase and for operations briefings. The form provides the following information: incident work locations, risks such as weather, biohazard, hazardous materials, communications, flooding, special hazard areas, fatigue, driving hazards, dehydration, and critical incident stress. It can also show the measures used to mitigate these risks. The mitigation measures identified may have implications for the resources entered on the ICS 215. The objective of the Incident Action Plan safety analysis is to identify, prioritize, and mitigate the hazards and risks of each incident work location by operational period. The mitigation method selected may affect the resources required for the incident work location. The safety analysis may also reveal that the proposed tactic is too hazardous to attempt and another tactic must be developed. The completed ICS 215A is displayed during the planning meeting. When the safety analysis is completed, the form is distributed to the resources unit to help prepare the operations briefing. All completed original forms must be given to the documentation unit. The planning meeting is the next step in the incident planning process. The planning meeting provides the opportunity for the command and general staffs, as well as the incident management personnel, agency officials, and cooperating or assisting agencies and organizations to review and validate the operational plan as proposed by the Operations Section Chief. The planning chief leads the meeting, following a fixed agenda to ensure the meeting is efficient while allowing each organizational element represented to assess and acknowledge the plan. The Operations Section Chief delineates the amount and type of resources he or she will need to accomplish the plan. The Planning Section's resource unit will have to work with the Logistics Section to fulfill the resources needed. At the conclusion of the meeting, the Planning Section staff indicates when all elements of the plan and support documents must be submitted so the plan can be collated, duplicated, and made ready for the operations briefing. The major activities of the planning meeting include: the Planning Section Chief gives the situation and resources briefing and conducts the planning meeting. The Incident Commander states the incident objectives and policy issues. The Operations Section Chief states the primary and alternative strategies to meet the objectives, with contributions made by the Planning and Logistics Section Chiefs. The Operations Section Chief specifies reporting locations and additional facilities needed, with contributions from logistics. Planning and logistics develop the resources, support, and overhead orders. Logistics places the orders. The logistics section chief considers additional support requirements needed for communications, traffic, safety, medical, etc., with contributions from operations, planning, and safety. The planning section chief finalizes the incident action plan, the incident commander approves it, and the general staff implement the incident action plan. Appropriate displays can play a significant role in conducting an effective planning meeting. Displays should include the planning meeting agenda, large versions of the ICS Forms 215 and 215A, any maps, the schedule for form submissions and additional meetings, and any other props needed to illustrate the incident action plan.